Da, da, da.
Hello, everybody. Everybody, hello. I'm interviewing Cole Hansen today
Don't you know?
on the show.
So today we're coming to you live from
Everywhere.
our closet.
Yes, from live from the closet because they're doing construction and
it's loud.
They're drilling and it's really, really loud. So we're actually in a closet.
Yeah, they have decided to redo the pool today. So, well, I mean,
This
they have
week,
been,
they've been doing the pool.
but they didn't drill all day. And then we came on today and we're like, oh,
It's going live and then get drilling.
Get drilling.
Get drilling. Oh, what drilling.
Now let me put this down one
notch.
level.
There we go. Get that microphone. Get that microphone out of my face.
Out of the way.
So, hey everybody, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Jews and Gentiles.
You're silly.
We are here today. This is day three of the serious self-care
You're so
challenge.
serious.
You're so serious.
Stop being so serious.
Kole put together a challenge for serious self-care, and it's been awesome. The things that people have been telling us that they've been doing, watching the lives, watching the interviews. We've had
doing the exercises every night.
We've had a couple of awesome people on that we've interviewed in regards to being through some really hardcore stuff and learning how to actually care for themselves. So today we elected to have me interview the amazing Cole Hansen, Cole Whitty, today on our live, and I'd like to ask you, other than how'd you get so beautiful.
Tell my mommy.
Yeah, and daddy. So yes. I'd like to start off with asking you how you feel about your self-care at this particular point in your life.
So self-care for me, it evolves, it shifts, it changes. I certainly know when I'm not doing it, that's for sure. I don't think that I ever realized the importance of it, really, and not just the taking time for yourself, but like the actual listening to your body daily. If I go a week without really checking in, that's when the physical pain starts.
Right.
I feel like those little cues at first when I get a little bit of back pain or, a slight headache or just tense things, I know how to handle it in the moment. So now I actually feel the most confident about my self-care, even though it's had a lot less physical activity and a lot less working out than in the past. I've never felt so connected with my body and so integrated in my body and really like being able to feel some of the nuances of when it doesn't feel good.
Right. So is your self-care regimen or your self-care, the things that you do for self-care, are they based on the avoidance and the reduction of pain, or they're based on pleasure seeking and actually caring for yourself and allowing yourself to flow? What would you say your major focus is?
The major focus has been the pleasure and the flow, actually. I didn't know not being in pain was an option. So there was never a goal of chasing the not being in pain.
Right.
Actually, you know what? That's not true. When I first started, it was about getting in less pain.
Wrong. So, yeah, I said right. I'm just messing with you.
Oh,
yeah.
When I first started, it was about getting in less pain because it was just having less inflammation in my knees, less, just so that I could walk for long periods of time. So I would say initially it was about getting in less pain.
Okay. So for the people watching, could you give people a little bit of background on the multiple things? Now, this Cole is I'm married to this woman and I get to spend a lot of my time. I say I spend 20, the time I'm not working out is the time that I'm not around Cole. So it's pretty much all day long. So I get to see how she operates and how she flows, and it's pretty magnificent. It's pretty elegant. It's pretty strong, and there's a lot of fun involved. There's a lot of stuff involved in Cole's daily, and to understand the amount of things that this woman has been exposed to, the amount of trauma, the amount of drama, the amount of life things that have transpired for this woman. For me, it's inspirational to be able to cohabitate in a space and to actually be fortunate enough to share a lot of time with somebody who is this powerful and this strong. And when I tell you ladies and gentlemen, that I admire my wife. I really do, because she's like a superhero to me. So, I mean, could you give the people that
The
are
laundry
watching
list.
a little bit of insight into the great amount of physical, emotional, and energetic stuff that you've been exposed to?
Sure. I mean, I had a lot of trauma as a child. I had a lot of trauma as a teenager. Everything from sexual assaults and rape and all sorts of, very common stories for a lot of women, unfortunately. And I also experienced like 26 broken bones, I think, when I counted.
Watch out, Evel Knievel.
3 broken noses, my collarbone, my arms, each in different places. My legs, tailbone, cracks, fractures.
Big toe shattered.
By a lot. Yeah. And that's the thing. There were all these very weird circumstances usually.
What about the horse?
Yeah, one of the second time I broke my nose, I got kicked in the face by a horse. So that was pretty intense.
And how many times were you kicked in the face by a horse?
No, just once.
Oh.
just once. But so I never went to physical therapies, and I never actually did, I guess, realigned or rebalanced my body, and didn't know about scar tissue adhesions, what happens. And I've had lots of surgeries at endometriosis, ovarian torsions, numerous laparoscopies. Just there was a lot. And so I really never knew an experience in my body that wasn't painful in some kind of way. So it was a lot to unravel. And by the time I reached my mid-20s, honestly, it was pretty rough. I think I was 25 or 26 when I went to Disneyland with my ex-husband. That was the practice marriage. And we were with the nieces and nephews and his family. And after walking around for only like 3 hours, my knees had gotten so swollen and it was so painful that I just sat down on the cement and I just started to cry because not only did I not want to live a life that way, I really just, I was at a point that because I was married, kids was something I was at least, thinking about. It was at least as an idea. And that feeling like I wouldn't be able to carry the weight. Right. I wouldn't be able to play with them or that kind of thing was a very hopeless idea because I felt like I was, 85, 90 years old and had already had this full life that I didn't feel like I'd had yet. And I didn't know how willing I was to stay in a life that was like that. So I honestly felt like the entire world was against me, and it was a very common idea for me to wonder what I had done to deserve all of that pain. Right. And then the subconscious idea that I did deserve all of it.
Right. And so on top of all of the injuries and the trauma and stuff that you had to deal with, you had several medical diagnoses that came up. What were they?
I had hypothyroidism. I was borderline type 2 at one point.
Type 2 diabetic, yeah.
Yeah, type 2 diabetic, or getting on the cusp of that. I was anemic. It was like I was carrying around an extra like 40 pounds from where I am right now. So to look at, it's not that I looked like I was severely overweight, I could work out kind of a situation, but my inflammation levels were so high. I was having severe fibromyalgia, migraines. I was even having blackouts, and I didn't know if that was from my coma. I was in a coma too in 2000. So it was really hard to even start to figure out how do I deconstruct a lot of these medical conditions and these physical pain anyway, when I really couldn't even start to figure out where the source was. Right. So there was, being on thyroid medications then threw me for another loop. I was, taking Ambien at night, and that wasn't working either to even get me to sleep. Working a job that I really hated, and just feeling pretty trapped, honestly, by being a prisoner in my body specifically.
In so many ways, yeah, that's pretty remarkable. I mean, when Kole, when we first started hanging out, and she was telling me, she'd be telling me, oh, I had this thing happen. I'm like, wow, that's pretty impressive. And then the next week she was like, yeah, and then I broke this, and then this fell off, and then this hit me, and I got kicked by a horse. And then these things were just piling up. And I'm like, oh my, how does one human being, Jamie Summers eats your heart out, man. I mean, the Bionic Woman. Anyway, maybe I'm showing my age. Who cares? Jamie Summers, a bionic woman. She's right here, y'all. She's the next bionic woman. So, when was it that you first decided that you had enough and that you were going to start to make a shift in your life?
The first moment was that day being at Disneyland and not being able to walk.
Right.
Just walk, just be able to take a vacation and see what I wanted to see. And then after that, after I had made that concrete decision, is when I bought a treadmill and said that I would walk every day because I had arthritis in my knees, osteoarthritis. And I said, I'm going to walk the days that I can walk. And then moving the treadmill into the house, the treadmill fell on my toe, split my big toe in half. And that was 2 years of reconstructive surgeries. And I almost lost my big toe. So I was literally looking up at the universe, just like, what did I do? Like, I'm doing everything that I can. And it's not good enough. And it's never going to be good enough.
Right.
And it really was, my subconscious was fully being presented to me in my face of what my belief system was about myself.
Right. And how did you decide to move away from those sabotaging subconscious thought patterns that you had?
Well, at this point, because exercise wasn't an option, because with the big toe, even lowering it below my waist for a long time wasn't an option. So I knew the only thing I had control over at that point was diet. And that was going to be my only choice to get weight off.
So what did you do?
So I started juice cleansing first. I bought a book called Clean by Alejandro Younger. It was a New York bestseller once upon a time. And I just said, this is literally the only option I have now. There is no other option, because it's either I die or I figure this out. There was it wasn't an option for me anymore, because I could not live in my body any longer with how much pain it was in it.
That's pretty remarkable. I mean, kudos to you for making that step, because a lot of the people that we come across when we're working have this air of hopelessness, and it's like, there's nothing else that I can do. The doctor said this and this and this and this, and they don't find that one place that actually clicks and makes the shift happen. So kudos to you for actually exploring and going into that. So how did the juice cleanse work for you?
Well, it worked amazing. I lost 20 pounds the first month that I did it. I went straight for 21 days. I did an elimination diet, which was, like 9 days leading up before you switch to juice. You first get to softer foods, and then you transition into juice and soups. So it's not just juice, but it's only like broth type vegetable soups. And honestly, it was just that, again, I wasn't considering that I would ever not be in pain. It was just, I was in so much that the first step was like, it can't be this much. I actually really prided myself in the fact that I was so strong, and that I was a warrior, and that I was a survivor, and I had succumbed to so much. And a lot of the realization was that I was going to have to stop surviving. And I was going to have to actively choose to not survive, but to create a life that I enjoyed, where I was thriving, and that was also leading me path towards more freedom, not staying where I was.
Right.
Because even if at this point, one direction, like 1 degree of shift was not going to do it. It had to be like a full, just complete turn the other direction, because with everything that I was experiencing at that point, it just wasn't an option anymore.
Wow. I mean, it's pretty remarkable. So now you've been on this quest, and I've watched a lot of it. I've watched your weight drop. I watched your musculature increase. I watched your flexibility change. I watched you be able to pop places in your back, and all these things that change. A few years ago, we started to, when we started building our business together, you started to have some blocks, and you started to have some issues with cognition, and you started to feel foggy, and all of this stuff started to come up. What was your feeling when that started to happen?
Well, it was scary, because my health had come so far, and my health was the best it had ever been in my life. To feel that sliding backwards, but not feeling like it was my fault, right? That I was eating clean and working out, and I was a full-time fitness instructor plus Beachbody's instructor of the year at that point. It didn't make sense why my health would be declining when nothing had changed. So honestly, the only word I can really think of is that it was scary. Really.
Yeah. So what was the next step that you did?
Well, the first step was to really realign my diet and take a clear look, like how honest am I really being with myself, that I'm not, maybe having dairy or something that could be causing high inflammation. Because in the past, the biggest cause for inflammation for my knee pain was dairy specifically. And like certain types of cheeses in particular, and then ice cream are like the two worst inflammatory things for me that I noticed in the elimination process. And there was just nothing left except for breast implants. There was nothing else in my body. And I had the breast implants for 14 years, but I had also started lifting heavier than I ever had before. So in retrospect, the possibility that I have considered is my breast implants, they encapsulate, right? Your body encapsulates any foreign object in your body. And so there's some, to me, what I have considered is the idea that in doing the heavy lifting and my implants being underneath the muscle, that it actually started to kind of flex that shell and potentially maybe break open that scar tissue shell a little bit. Because even though I had saline breast implants, the outside is still made of silicone.
Right.
And if your body's getting high temperature and, heating up and that kind of thing, it's going to, anything that touches your skin absorbs.
Right.
Or your tissue,
Right.
which we know that, right? That's why they tell you not to use toxic dyes and things, because it goes in through your skin. So why would a toxic ingredient not go in through your tissue?
And who's to say that the saline implants didn't have mold? I mean, there's tons of studies that show now that saline implants have been removed with mold and stuff growing inside.
Yeah,
and
there was a series of Mentor implants that had a faulty valve. So, and there have been cases where there maybe was a tear in even the silicone and even the gummy bear ones. So body fluid started to enter and started to break down that silicone, and it's being found in lymph nodes. This isn't an uncommon thing anymore.
Right. So you said something when we first were talking about this particular issue that you had, that struck a chord with me. And since we're talking about serious self-care, you said you had to start being honest with yourself about your diet, like ridiculously, seriously honest with yourself. How important for me, whenever I'm working with people, the first thing I tell people is, I need you to be honest with yourself. Before you're honest with me, before you're honest with your family, I need you to be honest with yourself. How important in your self-care has self-honesty been?
No, that's the most important part.
It's the absolute, for me too. It's the absolute most.
Because I also didn't, it's not that I didn't have people in my life to support me figuring this stuff out, but there was no one to do it for me. There was no one coming along to say, did you follow, did you write everything down today? Are you going through the protocol properly? That there wasn't that. And so I really had to take full responsibility that. And in the book, it said, this isn't a, you can kind of do it. If you're going to do it, it's an on-off switch situation. So if you cheat, you start over. Like that's actually what I was taught.
So we're in a world where we're taught to manipulate other people's imaginations of us by presenting an image, presenting, I'm doing this way. I'm doing it the right way. You're presenting that to other people, so you hide the truth from other people. And we tend to start to do that habitually to ourselves. How challenging was it for you to actually be honest with yourself about how you were eating, how you were taking care of yourself, and making sure that all the other aspects of you were in place before you decided that the next option was to have your breast implants removed?
How honest was it?
Yeah, how challenging was it to be honest, fully honest with yourself? How, was it challenging for you to be honest with yourself and say, I'm not drinking, I'm not smoking, I'm not eating this, I'm not doing that, I'm not, and making sure that all of that stuff was clean? How was that challenging for you?
Of course, but the discomfort of being in my body far outweighed the discomfort of letting go of things that I liked or I loved or that I consumed. And there were even foods that most people would not consider as unhealthy, but it doesn't function for my body well. And so I had to get serious on that. And I had to really that if I was going to create an environment to really try to rule out what was going on in my body, I was going to have to rule out every possible inflammatory thing in order to then see what's left. So it had to be everything ruled out for a period of time so that I knew what I was actually looking at and what I was up against.
So would you say that all of the other things that transpired earlier in your life allowed you to have the wherewithal to actually be honest with yourself when this came up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Listen, it's a practice, and it is not easy to be really honest with where you are, because if it's not where you want to be and it's where you said you wouldn't be, or, you know, by a certain age you were going to be to a certain point and you're not, it is really putting that mirror right in front of your face and knowing that, sure, we all have trauma and things that occur, but ultimately it is you're the person that makes your own decisions and what happens with your body.
So, I mean, kudos to you, and you know, anybody who's watching this, you know, it's very challenging, and one of the biggest things that we help people with is to actually be honest with yourself. Acknowledging that you need help, acknowledging that something is off, acknowledging that you may not be doing everything that there is that you could be exploring to take care of yourself, is the first step to self-care in every aspect. You can have other people taking care of you, you can have other people doing this stuff, but if you're not honest with yourself and things are not going right, and you keep going back to the doctor and you keep going back to these practitioners and you keep, you know, I don't understand why, but you won't change your diet, you won't change your movement practices, you won't even change your perspective. That is not being honest with yourself. And the number one thing for you to do in your life when you're doing self-care is to be honest with yourself.
I feel like even with a lot of the injuries that occurred for me, it was kind of like those initial stages of teaching me how to take responsibility for my own recovery. And that finally led into taking responsibility for my own wellness. Because when I look at how much time and money and resources were spent on trying to recover, is nothing compared to what we spend now investing into keeping ourselves well. And, you know, and even just for myself, after my coma in 2000, my short-term memory was just, I wouldn't say shot, because I could function and everything, but I had signed up to go to cosmetology school because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was 18, you know, whatever, it's kind of standard experience kid, or 19. And the same thing that when you look at the scale of how you judge careers, cosmetology school has never been at the top tier of what is like a challenging engineer type job, even though there's a lot of incredible talent. And I couldn't pass my tests because my short term to study, I couldn't retain the information. And the way that started to weigh on my emotional well-being, it was like I didn't have my physical well-being. I didn't even have my ability to mentate and to use my brain and to be analytical, because that had been stripped away from losing oxygen when I flatlined in the coma. So what?
No, so coma, right? We didn't get into how Kole ended up in a coma. Would you like to share that?
Sure.
So like Kole Gump, I call her Kole Gump because Forrest Gump went through everything, and she's been through it. Kole Gump. She's seen the world, and anyway, continue.
Well, I ended up in a coma in 2000 from a drug overdose. It was the date rape drug DHB, for people that are familiar. Now, I took the drug willingly and knowingly because at that point I was selling drugs. And with GHB, if you know what you're doing and take a certain kind of dose, it's a good way to come off of stimulants. So this particular night, the guy that I had taken it from had actually he had gotten it from someone that had tried to chemically recreate it. So I got poisoned. A few people ended up in the hospital that night, and I ended up in a coma. And even when I woke up from the coma, I couldn't remember anything. I struggled in conversation because of the short-term memory element. And the first year, especially, first year and a half, it was the little things. You know, I wouldn't remember if I locked the door or the car or where I put my keys, or, you know, but I developed a complex that I didn't feel like I could rely on any part of myself. I couldn't rely on my body. I couldn't rely on my mind. So it was like there was no part of myself I trusted.
Well, you know, I want to say thank you for sharing that. You know, it takes a lot to be that vulnerable and to share something that has a lot of stigma around it. You know, and there's a lot of shaming people and stuff around substances and stuff. So thank you. You know, it takes a lot, a huge heart and an open mind to come on Facebook and to be able to, and YouTube and all of this stuff, and tell people about that. So thank you for sharing. I know it's not the easiest thing, but your bravery is awesome. And I think that that vulnerability is another aspect of self-care, that we need to be able to allow people to see us so that we can help other people, so that we can actually receive help from other people. So showing that is a big deal. And thank you, baby. I really appreciate it. You know, your bravery is a lot to me, and I really appreciate that. So thank you for sharing that. And you know, if anybody else has experienced anything like this, I'm sure you know what she's talking about. So continue.
Well, and something that, you know, especially for people that know me through Ta, really have only known me as like a fitness chick, and they didn't see the me before that. And I was into yoga and practices, and I had already lost a significant amount of weight, but I was still trapped in the construct that doctors had told me that you will never jump, you can't run, because my knees have no cartilage left on the insides. I was told that I'm going to need knee replacement, and most of my family have had knee and hip replacements. So it's certainly genetically a common thing. And I decided that wasn't going to be an option for me. And when Ta first started training me, like I first started by going to his boot camps, then he started personal training me. I couldn't squat. I couldn't do lunges. I mean, my knee in a lunge, I could come down maybe an inch or two, like bent. I didn't have the range of motion. It was painful. It felt like my knee was going to like rip or something. And he said, just trust me, just keep showing up. It's a process. It's not going to change today. It didn't end up this way in a day. It's not going to undo itself in a day. And I think that that's one of the biggest disservice that we get conditioned in our society now, is that we have this instant gratification. We want a surgery. We want a pill. We want it to be fixed right now. Or we don't have the willpower to follow through with process, and then it ends up causing other problems. And losing the weight, changing my mindset, looking at the trauma that caused it, and not saying, hey, that's, you know, that's old stuff, I don't want to think about that. I said, I'm here to face and do whatever I need to, if it could work, if it could get me somewhere else than where I was. And also finding ways, a lot of it came from doing work around finding ways to forgive myself, finding ways to forgive the angry teenage version of me that got into selling drugs to begin with, and forgiving aggressors, forgiving a lot of people that intentionally hurt me.
Would you say that that's self-care?
Yes.
Forgiveness?
Yes.
Yeah.
The thing is, a lot of times with self-care, just going to a yoga class is not self-care. It's what's the talk in between the yoga classes. What's going on when you don't reach your goals? What happens when you don't show up? What happens when you drop something? It's what you say under your breath that matters the most, because that is the reactive part of you. That's the subconscious part that is coming forward to show you what you really think of yourself. And no other practice than consciousness and awareness can change that.
Right. So in today, I'm going to get back to the post breast implant surgery thing, but I wanted to ask you, you know, in today's world, in the self-help world, in the world of health and fitness, everybody's looking for a formula that's prescribed by, you know, one size fits all situation. What is your outlook on self-care being a one size fits all situation?
Well, it's not. And it's like with anything else, we don't want to be compared to everyone else, and yet we want a one system that fixes us in some way. It doesn't make any sense, you know, like, and I mean, as humans, we're full of contradictions anyway. But for me, the most critical part was the elimination diet, to see what specifically my body reacts to, and what things, as I added them back in, what was the impact of them. Because until you take time to do that, you're always guessing, and you might lose fat, but you may realize that you can have one kind of food and not another. You know, like, let's say you can't have nightshades, but then you're fine to have other foods that are considered inflammatory, and your body just processes it, and you don't seem to feel too much of an effect. Unless you take the time to get to know you're going to be bouncing around with this guessing game with no plan. You know, you can't build a business that way. You can't build a self-care model that way.
Right.
Not and have it grow and not have it improve.
Awesome. Thank you for that insight. I mean, see, this is why I rock with this woman, and you know, I'm always spellbound. I'm always impressed. It's a daily situation where I'm impressed by the stuff that flies out of this lady's mouth. It's absolutely bananas. So going back to the breast implant situation, when you had the implants taken out, it took a lot for you to be brave enough to have this done, to be vulnerable enough to make this situation happen. And in making that decision, how would you say that decision was self-care?
Well, because I had to trust myself. I was getting referred to different doctors, different specialists, different plastic surgeons, breast implant specialists, and everyone told me, at least in New York City. So we're talking about a major city with experience and medical experience and millions of people. Everyone said it can't be your implants.
Right.
And I'm grateful that our local practitioner, our PA, or our doctor, our general care physician, that she knows that I know my body. And anytime if I did go into her, I could tell her how it hurt, where it hurt, how I was sick, what I was sick. And she knew that I knew my body. So as we sat and talked about things initially too, she said, well, it can't be that. And I said, well, I hear you. And I'm telling you, it can. I've been doing research. I've found women that have reported this. There was a huge lawsuit that like it can be. And there's not even enough studies to prove that it's not anyway. And so she said, okay. So then she sent me for a scan to see, for an ultrasound to see if maybe one had ruptured and see if that was a problem. And it didn't show any ruptures, but I could just feel it, it from the moment that came across my timeline on Facebook from someone else's story, it was like my body heard it, but my mind tried to rationalize around it because I'd had the implants for so long that it was like, well, it can't be those because I've had implants for 14 years. And if they were making me sick, I would have known a long time ago. And then as that kind of like, I guess, settled into my consciousness a little bit, I realized my thyroid issues started pretty soon after getting the implants. The fibromyalgia, a lot of things that I saw listed as potential side effects of having breast implants or high inflammation from anything being in your body, or that, that fight response from the body. It made sense. And I honestly just had to spend that time with myself and not get into the rationality and say that I have to trust myself in this. And I am grateful for you trusting me, for you, you didn't question me ever, or, you were just like, if that's what you need, I don't need a reason. If that's what you feel you need, that's what we do. So I appreciate that greatly because I know a lot of women with breast implants that don't have that same kind of support. We've been conditioned to believe what makes us women, what makes us feminine, what makes us beautiful, what men want from us or what partners want from us. And I do know women who their relationships fell apart when they took their breast implants out, or the husband said, I can't stay with you, like it's going to affect our relationship severely enough that I don't think we're going to be able to make this work. And honestly, even if you hadn't have been on board, it wouldn't have been a question for me. Then it would have been, then the question would have been, so then what are you going to do? Because this is what I'm going to do.
Right. That's self-care in and of itself. If you're taking care of your body and the person that you're with doesn't want to be with you because you've had your implants removed, then that person really
not someone I want to be with.
That's not somebody who I don't think anybody should be with. That's self-care in and of itself. So in and of itself. So there were two things that I noticed when you were speaking about this that struck a chord with me about serious self-care. And that first thing is doing your research. You've got to do your research.
Exhaustive.
This is your body, and if you're serious about self-care, you have got to research it.
And multiple resources. You can't, you have to also research where the sources are from.
Right.
And I still considered anything that was like alternative medicine, and I considered anything that was Western medicine.
Right.
I considered anything Chinese medicine. Because at the end of the day, my only goal was to exhaust every effort to figure out what was going on.
And it's really important for people to understand that this is your body, this is your life. You can put your body and your life into the hands of other people, and you can have a say in it yourself, or it can be an either or thing. But you've got to do your research. Now the internet is available. Libraries are still around. There's tons of information that you can get about every part of the body that's been studied, that is being studied, medications, procedures, all of this stuff. You've got to be exhaustive about stuff, and you can't just rule anything out. Some people have better prognosis and better outcomes with Western medicine, some people with Eastern medicine, some people with alternative quote unquote therapies and plants and all of this other stuff, changing your diet. You got to explore what works for you. And it's so awesome to watch you explore all these different modalities for you, because I'm doing the same. I do the same for me. And and the other thing that I noticed that you said, other than the research, is to actually check in with yourself and actually know your body, actually be able to scan your body and to feel in yourself, and actually lay there and be quiet and just breathe into your body and feel what's going on with me. Touch yourself. People don't touch themselves. And it's like, what's going on? If you go to the doctor and the doctor pushes on something, it's like, ow, I've never felt that before. What are you doing? Why do you have to go to the doctor once a year for somebody to push on your stomach and you to be like, ouch? You should be able to touch and palpate yourself and feel around yourself. So bringing up those two things is awesome. So I just wanted to point these things out that I noticed that you're saying, and they have a whole theme around this self-care. So there's a lot of stuff going on. So
and it was the care leading up to the surgery, and it was the care after the surgery. I was doing a metal detox protocol because a lot of the chemicals in the shell of a breast implant are metals. So I was working with an herbalist to do metal detoxes leading up to it. After the surgery, I did a juice cleanse because that's what felt good for me, and not a juice to cleanse, but that's what felt good for me post anesthesia.
So tell them about the metal detox before you had the breast surgery. So
you guys.
So she's working with this herbalist named Jane Barlow, and she's awesome.
She is awesome. BarlowHerbal.com. Epic.
She is awesome, and she's reachable. Like, she's not somebody that, she owns the company and she runs a show, but we can reach out to her.
When I tell you I was sick, I was freaking sick. I was having nonstop urinary tract infections and yeast infections and like any infection you can freaking have.
Infection, on infection. She was going through it.
I was.
So this woman, Jane Barlow, sent her some stuff called Lomatium dissectum.
And I had already tried like every antibiotic, by the way, and been to the doctor and all that stuff, and nothing was working.
So I'll let you continue.
Well, so I got referred to Jane Barlow, and as we started talking on the phone, she's like, well, I do have a detox protocol, like a metal detox protocol. We'll do it for, 60 days leading up to your surgery. There's this thing called Lomatium dissectum. It's a cousin of parsley, and it's a pretty intense plant. And the short version of the story of what Lomatium dissectum is when the flu epidemic was breaking out in the 1800s in the United States, and all of the Native American tribes were being wiped out and killed, and just the population in general. There was one tribe in like northern Nevada that wasn't dying, and each area had a doctor or someone to monitor this flu epidemic. So they went into that area because people weren't dying. And when they were speaking to the tribe said, well, we use this Lomatium dissectum that keeps us from getting sick. And it was true. So they started studying it, and it was starting to get a lot of attention in the early 1900s, but then penicillin hit the market. And penicillin was accessible to anyone and inexpensive. So people stopped using the Lomatium dissectum. And Jane has continued to use it because her father studied with the botanist who first started to research and really understand the properties of Lomatium dissectum and how it works. Antiviral, antibacterial, but you can't say that according to the FDA. So I didn't say it, but just as a reference point. So she put me on the Lomatium dissectum. But the thing is, 7% of people get a full body detox rash. And when I tell you it's a full body rash, if you get it, it is.
It was pretty impressive. Like her whole body was covered. And the reason you get the rash is because all of the heavy metals and stuff come to the surface as
or
your
mold
body
or whatever.
Your body pushes it out through your skin, and it's the most itchy. Like I'm itching just thinking about watching. I mean, I didn't like I did LDM too, and
he didn't get anything. But I kept telling myself, I was like, the power of your mind. I won't get the rash. It's gonna be perfect, and I totally got it.
It was impressive.
There's a video on YouTube if you want to see what it looks like, and I'm puffy, I'm sad. Oh, and then I ended up needing a root canal too. Like when I tell you, I was just like a walking infection. It was
pretty impressive. So continue. I'm not.
Well, after 3 days, even though I was in, the lomatium dissectum, she tells you that if you don't get the rash in 7 days, then you're not going to get it. The 7th day is when it started. And I was like, oh, well, that's not so bad. I hit her up. I said, it's just a little red. It's a little uncomfortable, but it's not anything I can't handle. And she's like, yeah, well, it's going to get worse before it gets better. And I was like, I don't know, this is pretty bad, but like, I'm handling it fine. Oh no, it got worse.
Day 8, day 9, day 10.
There was a solid 3 days there that it was just like, it was interesting.
It was miserable.
And by the 3rd day though, these infections and things were finally cleared out. So even though I had the discomfort of the rash, for anyone that's had a urinary tract infection or a yeast infection or had them at the same time like I did, you'll take that kind of discomfort on your skin over your, that area any day of the week, which I did for a few days of the week. But so that was interesting, but it finally knocked everything out. And that was after no prescription was doing it.
Yeah. And so this brings us to another self-care point that I'm noticing from what you're talking about. And that is patience. You've got to be patient with yourself, and you've got to explore these things. You've got to be patient. That's a big part of self-care. It's not just being patient, but having patience and waiting things out and seeing and trusting these processes and going
and
with
writing it down.
Different.
If you don't write it down, you really don't have any idea what's going on in your body. You think that, well, I'll just remember. I'm not going to forget. It's in my mind. You don't know. The subconscious decisions you make with your body, with your mind, with what you eat on a day-to-day basis is never what you think. So unless you're specifically writing everything down every single day, you don't actually know.
Yeah. So journaling, there's another point of self-care. Journaling daily. Like I have a little journal. I have a bunch of journals, but they get filled up. It's right.
No, it's right there. It's my body journals under the nightstand.
Oh, you want me to go get it?
Yeah, I'm gonna show. When I tell you the lengths that what I started to realize is that more people needed to have a system of, well, what do I write down? And you need to write down your food and that kind of thing.
This one? Oh,
that one. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
So what I started to do was, because there's so much going on in my body, I don't even know how well you'll be able to see this. But because there was so much going on in my body, I had to start tracking it and doing stress and pain scales. Because just saying that I'm uncomfortable or just saying that I'm in pain is not specific enough. That's like saying I'm sad or I'm happy. It's this blanketed term that doesn't have enough description or enough clarity for you to track anything. So even if you're saying I'm depressed, you are not getting into enough detail of the depth and the gravity of what's actually going on. And that makes it really hard and almost impossible to start to dismantle the collective presence of all the things going on that may be creating whatever feeling, emotion, overwhelm, physical pain that's going on. And when I started to track it this way, and you can see my nice anatomical bodies, isn't that beautiful? I know you guys are super jealous of my drawing abilities, but you can see I would draw an anatomical body with where the pain was, and then I would specify what kind of pain it is. Is it stabbing pain? Is it numbing? Is it when I turn my head? Is it when I lift my arms? What makes it worse? What makes it feel better? Because at one point I had this pain in my middle back that I was going for massages. I had gone into a float tank. I had done anything I could think of that would usually help my back, myofascial release, active release. Nothing was helping this part of my back. And I realized that it was emotional and energetic. So I was going to have to uncover, what am I holding on to, or what am I stressing about that I'm causing this pain in my body. And that's another hard reality, to say that you are causing a lot of your pain, whether it's in the choices of the food that you're eating, or your inflammation levels because of stress, or just from the stress hormones in general. It is a lot of it being caused by you. And that is also back to what you were saying about being honest with yourself, and saying that you are actively hurting yourself every single day.
Yeah, and I mean, it's been awesome to watch Kole actually do this, because I do body check-ins every day with myself, and she's doing body check-ins, and we're actually coming up with a system of doing a body check. It's called the biointegration technique.
Yep.
And we actually have a full scan of the body.
What questions to ask yourself.
How to check yourself and that type of stuff. And we've actually been working tirelessly in the background to get this together, so that we can actually get this to people, so that
you have a book to tangibly have. Look, it still has the Goodwill sticker on it. So that you have a book on your nightstand to check in with yourself every day, because the reason that disease and cancers and so many things reach the stages that they do is because we weren't paying attention, or we were future focused, or we didn't want to know. So we kept putting it off because we had a feeling it was something really bad. And if you're too afraid to turn and look at it, that's when it gets worse, because it's not going away. And you literally have to make the decision to face the truths of what you're doing to yourself, what choices you make are directly impacting your physical and emotional health and wellness.
Yep.
And, if you haven't already found the studies that show that nutrition is directly related to depression and psychotic breaks, different types of psychosis, children with ADHD, spectrum, autism, doesn't mean that diet is going to make it go away, but the impact of the diet can take someone from being, where they are on an autism spectrum, where they're not having freakouts anymore, or they're not having the same sensory overstimulation issues, because our children now are far more sensitive than they used to be. And there's lots of reasons we can attribute to, and we're not even going to bother to do it in this string, because you can do that research yourself. Yeah. But between the foods, between the refined sugars, between the electronics and the frequencies that are going around us in all direction, from the electronics we use to the overstimulation of our technologies it's endless, right? Mm-hmm. So it's more important than ever for you to track and really take a daily account of what's going on in your body. And when you first start to track these things and you first start to make changes, it's going to take a month to 6 weeks for you to see if something's making a difference. So if you rule out something like dairy and you do it for a week, you'll notice some differences right away, especially if you've had IBS or that kind of thing. But you may not notice for a month, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. And unfortunately, especially when it comes to certain types of, say something like gluten, if you have a sensitivity to gluten, not just an intolerance or an allergy, but just a sensitivity to it, if you slip once during the week, then that's it. You have to start, it's starting again. It's not, I'm doing pretty good. That doesn't exist for some things. So just because you're doing pretty good means that you could be literally putting yourself in a position of deficit feelings because you can't have the foods you want, but then you mess up, so you're not committed, and it resets it and starts over because your body has a sensitivity and it's an on-off switch. So it's better to give yourself 1 month. This isn't a diet. This is to see what's directly impacting your health right now that will cause the most immediate improvements.
Yeah, and getting over, when considering your diet, getting over the emotional humps of your connections to particular foods is really important. When you start
and keeping it out of the house.
Yeah, when you start to weigh the balance of, is this midnight snack worth my health? And can I sit through the emotional discomfort of the connection to this food that I have? It's really important stuff in your self-care situation. Is what is making you snack on things that don't function for you? What is making you eat foods that don't work for you?
What part of the emotional element that you cannot self-regulate? What tools can you develop in order to be able to pause before making decisions to assess why you're making the decision? The only thing that you need is to learn how to pause. That's it. So that then you have a moment to, instead of react, respond to the situation and say, does this align me to the way that I want to go, or doesn't it? And instead of it being right or wrong or healthy or not, if you can find the tools that you need, whether it's meditation, whether it's getting all the food out of the house, whether it's getting your whole family on board, whether it's, putting a freaking lock on the fridge at night, whatever it is, so that you can first develop that pause, because that pause is everything when it comes to especially figuring out what's going on in your body, because that, unfortunately, the truth of the matter is that one decision, if you have certain types of sensitivities, will unfortunately reset your food situation. And a lot of people go around saying, well, I'm doing the best I can and I want a cheat meal a week. Some of you have sensitivities that are so severe that is not an option for certain kinds of foods. That doesn't mean everything.
Right.
And you can find another option if there's a food that you love. But unless you get really honest with yourself, you're going to struggle with this idea of diet your entire life, instead of finally committing to figure out what works with your body and what doesn't. Then you never diet again. I don't diet. I don't have to, because I found out what adversely affects my body. If I'm going out somewhere, I know certain things, there's no chance I'm eating it because I'm going to end up with a headache. There's certain food stabilizers I'm sensitive to. So it's not an option. It's not on the table for consumption. It's literally not an option. And people will be like, well, I can't do that. Then don't complain about it, because that's just as empowering to say, I'm choosing this and I know that it makes me feel like crap, but I don't care. This is what I choose. At least you're not a victim to your circumstance. It is your choice.
And that goes back to that self-honesty.
Yeah.
That's being honest with yourself. Listen, I'm not, I can't stop. I won't. I'm just not going to. It's the same thing with smoking. It's the same thing with alcohol. It's the same thing with whatever your vices may be. If you can be honest with yourself, listen, that might work, but I'm just not.
I'm not interested.
I'm not going to do it, and I'm just going to have this pain, and I'm just going to sit in it. But you complain.
And you can still be happy in that pain. By the way,
you can. You can. If having a few drinks,
having your
dairy and having sugary foods is more important to you than the pain, rock with it, man. I'm in this pain, man, but these chips, man, I gotta have these chips. Gotta have these Snicker bars.
And especially, with IBS and a lot of stomach problems, there's people that say, but I can't give up cheese. So, okay, so you'll deal with having the runs on a daily basis to have your cheese. As long as you're good with it, who cares? You can do what you want.
And there's something empowering about a person who can just be like, listen, man,
I'd rather have my cheese,
man, and have the runs as well. So thank you so much for sharing all of this. So I want to ask you one more question. Is that cool?
Yes, I will marry you.
Again. On September 3rd.
Where are we going to get married this year?
I have no idea. We get married every year. So I have no idea where we get. I don't even know.
That's far. We really don't. We know where we are for some events, but we don't really.
Self-care is traveling.
Yes, it is.
Living, in this.
And being in the closet. For anyone that missed it, they're redoing the pool at the complex we're at. So right as we set up, the jackhammers started going off. We're like, okay,
and it's
rock on.
It's 6 o'clock and it's still out there drilling, man. They've been drilling
90 degrees. 90. We were excited that we finally had a slower week where we could go sit out by the pool. I mean, we have since we've been here, but this whole week was like, yeah, we're gonna go out by the pool every day for a little while.
Pool's closed.
Closed all week.
All week long.
I know, poor us.
So my question.
Yes.
What are 5 things that people can use right now for serious self-care?
5 things.
5 things.
I mean, there's always our 5 investments. That's a pretty good, an oldie but a goodie.
What are the 5 things that people can swallow right now that they can start using for self-care that you do?
Yes. So.
And they can be stuff that we spoke about already. It doesn't have
Sure. The 5 things to implement right now, if you want to, is buy the book Clean. Understand at least a base level of what inflammation is and the impact it has on your body. That's a good start. It's an easy read. It's easy to consume. You can get it for $10-15. So I think that that's super important.
Who's it by?
Alejandro Younger. I'll put the link, or send it out in the email tomorrow. You need some movement practice, because if you're not in your body, our body is the experiential vehicle in the moment of now. And this is the big thing that we, is kind of like our mission as we step out into this new phase of our business, that your body is the only part of you that's in the present. Your mind goes to the future. Your mind goes to the past. Your heart and your spirit can really go throughout space and time. They're not limited as far as where they are, but your body is only ever in the present. And if you aren't in your body, you're missing the cues. Not only are you missing the physical cues of if you're hungry, if you're thirsty, is there pain, what's going on? You're missing the instinctual cues. You're missing the cues that align you with where you want to be. Everyone has an experience of having a bad feeling, right? Someone walks into the room, or a job or a work experience that they're like, yeah, I had a feeling about that. That gut instinct is constantly happening. Only the pleasure the pleasure parts of that want to attract you to more pleasure are more nuanced, and they're quieter, so it's like you have to be rid of a lot of these inflammatory foods in order to hear the radio signals, because the radio signals get all mixed up from different sensorium and foods. So having some practice that gets you in your body every day, even if that's just a 10-minute stretching regimen for yourself every morning, that's a start. And body check-ins, because again, if you don't know where you are and you are honest with where you are, then you can't make moves to where you want to go.
So body check-ins is number 3.
Body check-ins.
Number 3, okay.
Yeah. Which I put into a movement practice, but yeah. Getting in your body. So, and then the scans. So that's 2 things.
Mm-hmm.
Water is super, super, super important.
How much water?
Bare minimum 3 liters a day for most people. Like 2 if you're desperate in the middle of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
The general rule of thumb, or what a lot of different people say, is half your weight in ounces is a good solid amount.
And if you don't want to measure, your urine is always a telltale sign of your hydration status. Pale yellow, clear to pale yellow for me is always the best scenario. If your urine is dark and you can smell it fulminating from the toilet. Yes, fulminating. So that if you can smell your urine fulminating from the toilet, you're not drinking enough water. So please, unless you had some asparagus or something like that, then it's going to be strong.
Or certain supplements.
Or vitamins, yeah. So, but if it smells like urine, piping hot urine coming from the toilet, you need to drink some more water. So that was 3. Great.
That was 3.
Mm-hmm.
Some journal. Writing down what's going on in your life is super important.
Yeah.
And not just, it doesn't have to be a journal of your feelings necessarily, but it's what are your stress levels like? Like, even if before you go to bed, what is your financial stress? What's your family stress? What's your work stress? What's your home stress? Like, where you're living, your residence, whether it's with family or not.
What you going to do about it tomorrow?
Yeah, making an actionable step instead of always stressing about everything that you need to do. If you make one choice every day that's going to align you to better health, so maybe it's drink more water, maybe, if you do, if you start your day with like a 10-minute stretching and then a body sequence, and then choose one step and you notice that your body hurts, maybe it's sore or it's really tight, can you go to a yoga class that day, or just spend some time stretching on your own?
Foam rolling.
Yeah, or foam rolling, or finding a modality that's accessible for you that day. Not, okay, I'll try to fit something in on Saturday. Your body's telling you it needs it right now. So what step is your body trying to communicate? And then paying attention to the unique language that it's communicating to you, because you may be getting a headache because of your job. You may be getting a headache because of stress in your relationship or whatever. And your body is communicating your truth constantly. And most of the time, You're just ignoring it.
Right. Number 5.
Number 5, as cheesy as it sounds, finding gratitude in your life is super important. And people say, you know, oh, I write a gratitude list. For me, the thing that I'm most grateful for in my life is you. And it's very important for me to communicate that to you. So if you have people in your life, tell them. If there's someone or a person or whatever that means a lot to you, tell them every day. Because if you have even one thing in your life that you're grateful for, then say it every single day.
Yeah, and it shifts everything.
It does.
Everything in your life.
You don't have to make a whole gratitude list. Start with one thing that is really the reason that you can still get out of bed. And then what else can you do to shift your life to have more things like that?
Awesome. So thank you, Kole, for sharing your stories, your
my many stories,
your amazing epic happenings, traumas, dramas, 26 some odd broken bones, multiple medical diagnoses, coma, all kinds of, just, you're magnificent, and your bravery speaks very loud and clear about who you are and how you flow. And I look forward to your adventures with me and Henry as we move forward.
He's been here the whole time. No one knows, but he's always here.
Yeah, he's crawled back and forth a couple of times.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, from my lap.
Look, he's sleepy. Lap. Look at him. He's like, man, listen.
Anyway, we love you all. Please take care of yourselves. Care for yourself. Nobody else is going to be functional if you are not functional in yourself. You can't save the world if you don't save yourself. So please take care of yourself. If you need help, ask for it. Be vulnerable. Let people around you know that you need help. Let us know. Reach out. We're here. This is what we do. This is what we do for a living. We help people to see themselves. We help people to connect with themselves. So, stay tuned. We're going to be getting that body integration technique journal out for people to
by the fall for sure. We've actually got a full team now to help us develop this, because everyone has these epic things that they want to be a part of. They have a mission, they have a purpose, they have, whether it's our friends that are activists or our friends that are entrepreneurs that are setting up new corporations to make a difference. If you're in pain, you can't do anything.
Nothing.
It gets in the way of everything. And if we've decided that if we're going to make a maximum impact on this world, our first action or our biggest impact is to get as many people out of pain as possible.
And kudos again to you for the Women's Summit that you put on 2 weeks ago. Is it 3 weeks now? 3 weeks now. Kole put on an amazing women's womb healing summit with 27 professionals with perspectives on healing the womb area of a woman's body, self-care. It's just absolutely amazing. If you need info on that, please hit us in the comments, and we'll send you a link to that. It's changed the lives of hundreds of women, and it's such an honor to be with a woman who is so astute about caring about other people and caring about herself.
And that's because I did the work to get my body in a position where I could. I never could have done this if I wouldn't have sorted out a lot of these medical issues.
And believe me, it's a lot easier when she's not in pain.
Oh man, it still comes back. If my stress kicks in, man, that fibromyalgia will come back. That back pain, headaches, it'll come back. And that's a gift. That's my body telling me you're not listening. And so you need to pull back and come back to you so that I can keep contributing and bringing things to really transform other people's lives, because mine has been transformed. So my goal is to help you all do that in a fraction of the time that it took me. It took me 7 years. For people with a lot of conditions, if you'll show up and do the work, you could do it in 2. If you don't have a lot of conditions, you could do it in a month or 2 months or 3 months. So decide right now. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again. I love you. You're awesome.
You're awesome.
And get you some loving. That's some self-care. Mm-hmm. Get you some loving. All right. Peace. We love y'all. Be easy. Be free. Take care of yourselves.
Be mac and cheese.